We are talking NAIA football tonight on the forum here on Midwest Sports Net. I'm Joey along with Cory and Vince, and we're going to get right into it. Our first question, our lightning question here on the forum tonight. And there are no wrong answers, Vince. Here we go. No wrong answers. So whatever is – I tease you.
Oh, because Cory's always right? Yeah.
Oh, here's the question. At the start of the playoffs, when the playoffs first got started, right before any games were played, and you thought about who might be in the championship game, did you have either of these two teams in that championship game, Cory?
I can't say that I did. Now, I knew that Northwestern was playing at a really high level with Jalen Gramstad, or as I call him, Tyson Koima 2.0. And I knew that they were playing at a really high level, but I didn't know if they were going to be able to get past Morningside. Well, Kaiser took care of that for us. So here we are.
Yeah, that is true. Northwestern and Kaiser in the championship game. And so, Vince, I'll throw it to you.
No? I absolutely didn't. I was, I started drinking the Kool-Aid like everyone else, thinking that it was going to be a Morningside, and I thought Grandview, and who knew? Wow.
Okay. Well, I'm here's my wishy-washy answer. Okay. I'm going to say yes and no, and here's why. Okay. If it were a true bracket, and it were, you kept everyone on the same side of the bracket and it just played through, I would have said yes, because I thought there was a really good chance for a potential Morningside Northwestern rematch to bookend the season. I thought that's a nice symmetry. However, because the committee reshuffles the deck week in and week out every time, I wasn't sure that was going to happen. So I would have had Morningside and possibly someone else, because I really thought Morningside and Northwestern were going to meet in an earlier round, probably the semis. And the way Morningside had been playing, I don't know. But then again, there are so many variables in that now. And of course, now we know Dolencheck, obviously, we're dealing with some issues too, as we found out into the playoffs. And it's an interesting matchup though. So let's talk about that now. Here we are on the forum, and I'm Joey here with Midwest Sports Net, along with Cory NAIAFBALL, Vince from the Varsity Sports Show. We are coming to you from all different parts of the country. I'm right here in the middle in Oklahoma, Cory out on the east section of the country in Florida, and Vince out west. And where the sun is the sun still up out there yet, or it's gone down now?
No, it's gone down, and in fact, it's been raining. So whatever, whatever you guys did, it got to us. So anyway,
well, it's where we are right now. Vince out in Arizona, and it's been perpetually gray here in Oklahoma for quite a while, and it looks to stay that way for a little while longer. But that's okay. December's here, and it's a fun time because we're continuing to talk, at least for one more week, about NAIA football. We've done that all season long. It's been a privilege, guys, to get to talk with you about this over the course of the year. I think it's been a fun year, and it comes down to this. Two teams that very much deserve to be in this championship game in Kaiser and Northwestern. The way they've played this year, the different routes it's taken to get to this point, and I think that there's a lot to be said about both these teams. So let's start with Kaiser, and we're going to bring up here on the screen Kaiser's schedule. So we're looking at Kaiser's schedule right now. We'll go down through that a little bit. Cory, let's start with you. That's relatively close to where you are based. Tell us a little bit about Kaiser and what you think about their year.
Kaiser has had, what interesting just does not cover it. You're talking about a team that started 1-3 after taking a punishing schedule past perennial powerhouse in D2, Valdosta State. You played Mississippi College, who is still D2, and you played Lindenwood, an FCS school, not like some of these other FCS schools over here that are Pioneer League that don't have scholarships. No, this was a 63 scholarship FCS school. And then they just go run the table. They beat Southeastern. They take out St. Thomas. When I actually got to go see them play against Valdosta State. Now, Valdosta State did have a down year. They're ranked 38th in SP Plus this season, which is an extremely down year for Valdosta. But Valdosta still has dudes. 6'7", 6'8" offensive linemen in the 300-pound range, guys that could play at the FBS level. And Kaiser's offensive line easily handled that Valdosta State defensive line, and Kaiser's defensive line was able to get penetration against those big old, huge, big uglies of Valdosta State. They came up short in that game, but I took notice that they took it to Valdosta State as much as Valdosta State wanted.
Yeah, and it was close. I mean, for a half, and they had a lead for a bit.
They sure did. I think they led at halftime.
Else. So, well, if they got your notice, then that was a big deal. Vince, Kaiser, I know it's on the other side of the country there, but they've been making some noise, and I know that you followed them as well.
Well, I did, and I wish I could go back. In fact, we probably should have done this before we did this call, but to go back to week number 4, when they were 1-3, were they on anybody's poll? Were they on our poll? I don't remember that far back.
They were.
But to be 1-3 and to be in our top 25, regardless of who the competition was, I mean, even within Kaiser, I don't know that I would have foreseen at 1-3 these guys playing in a championship game.
No, and it's been fun to watch since that time, because I think the key phrase that everyone's used since those 3 games is, well, Kaiser's undefeated in NAIA play. Undefeated in NAIA play, and it keeps coming back to that, and that's been a big deal. Of course, you see their playoff victories right there, and those are some big wins against an undefeated Bethel team that was just rocking and rolling all year long, and then the number 1 team in the country, and then the number 2 team in the country. And by the way, it's fitting they're playing the number 3 team coming up in this championship game. So I thought it was a pretty big deal for them to do that. I think one of the biggest things about Kaiser that's caught my attention, because we had one of the videos we had preseason was Marquise Burgess as one of the top 5 running backs returning in 2022. Burgess has a phenomenal year, rushes for more than 1,100 yards. And then, because of injury, well, hey, what are we going to do now? Oh, well, we'll just fit in, Jaden Meisinger, and he'll take over and become a second 1,000-yard running back for this team in the same season. So that was a phenomenal thing for them. No, I as they went along, it became more real. I think the Morningside victory was huge, and of course that is a whole video in and of itself, that game alone. But I think really that was such a big win. They made it to the Final Four a couple of years ago, but this team really seems to be rolling well. So Kaiser is there, came in as the number 12 team in the 16-team bracket brought to us by the NAIA FCS committee. The number 3 team in the NAIA FCS seeding was Northwestern. And Cory, Northwestern, I mean, that 1-point loss at the start of the year, and then it's been all W's since then.
Just to go back on it, I did go pull the tape. Week 5, our poll. Kaiser sat at 15 at 1-3.
All right.
So apparently we had the fake. Northwestern has had just, you come into the season thinking that Blake Fryer is going to replace Tyson Koima. He's the heir apparent. He played in the national championship game when Koima was hurt against Lindsey Wilson. So you think that Fryer is the heir apparent. He's going to take over. We're going to be fine. And they were fine. They weren't special. Then they turned the ball over to Jalen Gramstad, and their offense found the afterburner. And Jalen Gramstad immediately just goes off for a 5-touchdown game. I believe it was 3 through the air and 2 on the ground. Won our player of the week that week. We're going, who's this guy? Where did he come from, and where has he been? Ever since that quarterback change, that has just been the missing piece to the for Northwestern's offense. Their defense has come into their own as well, allowing 0 points in the playoffs before garbage time. And they are ready to play anybody, anywhere.
It is interesting. And by the way, you wonder, where did he come from? The defensive side of the ball is where he came from. And I had forgotten about that until getting to visit with Coach McCarty earlier this week. And by the way, if you're watching, we do have visits here on Midwest Sports Net with both Coach McCarty and Coach Sosha here on the channel. Please subscribe. But I'd forgotten about that he played over there. And yeah, he just shifted back to the offensive side this year. And what a coaching decision to let that happen and to make that move. I mean, that's incredible when you see that and recognize that. Vince, Northwestern, I know we've talked about teams from Iowa here, and we probably talked more about Morningside and Grandview, especially in the early going, but Northwestern has really made a statement.
Well, they have. And I know that we took notice in that opening week loss to Morningside, that 1-point loss. But honestly, as I look through their schedule, to me, they didn't really catch my eye. I mean, truly catch my eye until they defeated Midland in probably week 9, week 10, because that was, up until that time, that was the only ranked opponent that they beat.
Yeah, and that was a big matchup. And somebody was teasing me earlier this week as I was a fan of Midland. And you know what? I enjoy all of these teams. I was just enjoying watching somebody else besides Morningside and Northwestern put themselves in that position at that point in the season too. I mean, really that was almost a de facto playoff game at that point. And it wound up being so because Northwestern moved on in and then put themselves in a position to win. Comparing these two, and I didn't get the Northwestern schedule up there. I'll get that in a moment. Comparing these two really quickly, let's talk about points per game. Northwestern averaging 44.4, Keiser 31.9, Northwestern third in the country. 81 touchdowns to Keiser's 51, Northwestern second in the country. Ahead in rushing yards per game. We talked about two running backs for Keiser that so well, but Northwestern still leads in total rushing yards per game as a team, 206.8 to 197.8. And then the other side, Northwestern has the advantage here also, giving up only 10.5 points per game all year. Cory, you're talking about how big they were, how big the defense has been in the playoffs itself and not giving up points early on. 10.5 for the season. Keiser's given up 20.4 for the season, but even if you take out those 3 games in the middle there with non-NAI competition, they're still giving up 16.6. So, I mean, all of those numbers on the surface right now would favor Morningside. And Morningside, again, 12-1, Keiser 10-3 coming in. Players really that you would think of to watch then for these teams. Cory, I'll pitch this to you first just because I think you have to talk about the ground game and how big that is for both these teams. And you mentioned what Gramstad had done.
Yeah, absolutely. And off of Gramstad and that threat comes Connor McQuillan. And they've done a really great job over the last couple of years really developing that running game. If you think back a couple of years to their last national championship appearance when it was the Coima show against Morningside in that semifinal game, if I remember correctly, McQuillan only had like 1 yard rushing on 2 attempts. They completely abandoned the running game through the running back and was completely running the ground game through Coima. Now, with Gramstad, they figured out a way to have both of them going at the same time, and it's really helped develop that Northwestern ground game, which makes their aerial attack that much more difficult because you've got to have all 11 guys paying attention, reading their keys, doing a perfect defensive job every play and play out.
Vince, in looking at these teams, I mean, we talked about Northwestern's ground game, but I mean, obviously Keiser has a ground game too. You got two 1,000-yard backs. Is there anybody that stands out to you from that roster?
Honestly, I see a lot of balance on both teams offensively. I mean, when you look through even the national standings, nobody really stands out on either roster. I mean, you've got a great rushing game for Keiser. You've got great balance on Northwestern's roster, and despite the fact that they're scoring a lot of points, it's a shared effort. I'll reserve my opinion later when you get to your next question about Player of the Year and so on and so forth, because I'm going to throw a wrench in it completely.
All right. Well, I would have been disappointed if you hadn't done that. So we give you the key to the wrench closet. Vince, there's no question there's no doubt. We're here on Midwest Sports Net. By the way, visiting with Cory from NAIAFBALL and Vince from Varsity Sports Show. And of course, I'm right here at Midwest Sports Net. Please consider subscribing to the channel. We crossed the 1,200 subscriber mark, and we're rolling along. So we appreciate your help on that. We enjoy talking about small college sports and more throughout the Midwest and beyond right here. I did want to ask this. I think it's been a fun playoffs. I really do. I think it's been fun to watch. Obviously, there have been upsets, and we don't have a 1 versus 2 matchup. And that in of itself has been kind of fun, unless you're a fan of either 1 or 2. But it's kind of fun to watch that. I think there have been some fun games. Cory, a game or two that might stand out to you through these past 14 games?
There have been a couple of them that have were really so much fun to keep up with. And honestly, they were both in the first round. So the first one is the Reinhardt-Lindsey Wilson, where Reinhardt just claws back to within an inch of Lindsey Wilson, fails the 2-point conversion, and loses. But what a Herculean effort from Reinhardt, a team that you don't think of when you think of explosive offenses in the NAIA. Lindsey Wilson had just gotten a pick 6 on them. They're up 23-0. And here comes Reinhardt clawing back. They come up just shy. The other game that day that really was intriguing to me was Kaiser Bethel. Bethel had gotten out to a 17-7 lead in the fourth quarter. And Kaiser scores to make it 17-14 and rattles off 20 unanswered points to beat Bethel, to stun the Wildcats from McKenzie, Tennessee. And it was at that point that I went, okay, Kaiser can play from behind. This is going to be dangerous. Because, Kaiser's usually a team, them and Reinhardt both, if you get them behind, they have historically had hard times catching up due to their reliance on the ground game. But if Kaiser can make their way back and show some explosiveness, as they did in that fourth quarter with a 71-yard pass to Jalen Arnold and a 62-yard touchdown pass to Robinson there, Michael Robinson. If they can be explosive, that shows a side that wasn't necessarily there. And so those two games, I love a good comeback one. And those were huge comebacks where I thought Reinhardt and Kaiser were both buried.
Yeah. And that Kaiser comeback probably was meant a lot to them building up into the next week. Vince, anything stand out to you of those first 14 games?
Well, the Northwestern really putting Morningside on notice in that opening week. I mean, that 1-point loss. Now, granted, it was a loss, but it showed there was a little chink in the armor of Morningside there. And you knew it was going to come back to bite them at the end of the season and in the playoffs, because obviously Morningside sailed through the regular season. And so that was one that really caught my attention very first week of the season. The other game for me, now being a West Coast guy, Sooner Athletic Conference, was the upset of Arizona Christian over OUAZ. OUAZ at the time was ranked number 7 in the country. Arizona Christian defeats them by 2, 40-38, and it was an impressive win, because ultimately that's the win that got Arizona Christian, in my opinion, into the playoffs into the postseason.
It really was. And of course, now we know it's the farewell tour it was for Arizona Christian in the Sooner Athletic Conference. Vince, let me ask you this, and I don't know if you know this or not, so I'm just asking. Arizona Christian to the Frontier, we've talked about that a little bit here on this channel. I know we'll talk about it more next year too. Do you know if the two Arizona teams will have each other on the schedule outside of conference play? I mean, the Sooner Athletic Conference now can't field the same regular season schedule full like it has, and the Frontier is not quite big enough yet to do it in that conference either.
Yeah. I can't confirm that, but it would be a travesty if they weren't playing each other next season. I could see a non-conference game. I mean, the two schools are literally less than 5 miles apart, so it's got to be on the schedule next year. It makes sense fiscally, and it makes sense as a crosstown rivalry, but nothing officially has been planned as of yet.
Well, please break the news here on Midwest Sports
I
Net
will.
if you get that chance. We want to do that. I'll tell you what, guys. My games from that stood out to me from the playoffs. Well, the first one obviously was one you mentioned. The Lindsey Wilson, the Reinhardt, and the comeback. You're right. I mean, a pick six midway through the fourth quarter. Lindsey Wilson's up 23-0. Reinhardt really hasn't shown that much offensively all day long, and then Hunter Arter's not one, not two, but three touchdown passes in the last 7 minutes of that ball game. And here's the thing that people are not talking about this enough, guys. This is what happened in this game. They got the touchdown, go for two, 8 points, 23-8. Get the touchdown, go for two, 8 points, 23-16. They get the touchdown and decide to kick the extra point. It was on the board. Hey, have you all ever heard the phrase, never take points off the board? Reinhardt took a point off the board because they got the extra point. Lindsey Wilson had a substitution infraction. They had too many men on the field. I think they even had like 13. I'm not sure. I think it was more than 12. They had too many men on the field. Reinhardt has tied this up. This is going to overtime. I was prepared. I mean, I'm listening to it. I'm prepared. This thing's going to overtime, and this is going to be really interesting. And I left the room, and I come back in, and it's over. I missed the going for two because I just, as far as I was concerned, I mean, I've got time to go refresh my Dr. Pepper. Everything's fine. This is going to be an interesting come back in. It's over. It's done. And so, wow, that to me, I've always heard I'm 51, never take points off the board. Reinhardt took points off the board and it cost him in that. The other one that I thought was really a big one was the Kaiser Morningside game. And Cory, you alluded to the fact that Kaiser found a way to come back. They did in that game too. And what Bryce Beasley did coming off the bench, and I was watching that one, and Shea Spencer got slung down pretty hard, and he was slow getting up, and it took a little while. Let's go to break, come back. Okay, he's not in. Okay, new guy in the game. Beasley comes in, 18 plays, 74 yards. It resulted in a Meisinger touchdown, and it kept them in the game because they were down 21-3. And then, of course, he does. You mentioned Jalen Arnold is another. This time it was Beasley to Arnold for the touchdown pass that wound up winning the ball game there against a Morningside team that was dealing with some injuries itself. Let's not leave that out there. I mean, because we didn't have Ryan Cole and it didn't have, well, Dolanchek was there, but he was not 100% Dolanchek. And so, that's what it was. All right, guys, I'll ask you this. This may give Vince a chance to shine. So we'll go to Vince first on this one. I always want to give Vince a chance to shine. So
thank you.
Leading it, you do anyway, sir. No doubt about that. He's local government and elected to a third term. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Oh, thank
Vince.
you so much. Thank you.
What is your role again? I'm not sure what all the council members are called.
Yeah, I'm a town councilman in the town of Carefree, of all places. Carefree.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely love it. Third term as council member.
Third term, yes, sir.
Can't tell you how honored we are to have you on the show, and I mean that. I really mean that. Okay, let's talk then. If you were considering a Player of the Year candidate, I realize they didn't ask us, that we don't get a vote. I don't know. Do either of you guys get a vote? I don't get a vote. But if we did, who might be someone or someones that you think could be represented as a Player of the Year type? So, Vince, who do you think?
Okay, so I'm going to give you two. And the reason why is I have a regular season Player of the Year candidate, and then I have a postseason Player of the Year candidate.
Okay, Vince, you can give me as many as you want. You're on out there now. Go for it.
Okay, all right. So the regular season will be the obvious choice. It was a quarterback from Morningside, Joe Dolanchek. Everything he did, I mean, he was all world, all universe, everything for the stats that he pulled up in terms of number of touchdowns, yards, everything. He's obviously deserving of that. However, postseason, it's going to be the difference maker in the national championship game. Now, I'm going to more or less spill it here early and tell you who's going to win this final game. In my opinion, it is going to be Northwestern, because you have two prolific offenses that are coming into this game. The difference maker is going to be a guy on defense, and he was the GPAC Defensive Player of the Year. He's a sophomore, a linebacker by the name of Parker Fryer.
Okay, very good. Fryer's already had a key interception in this playoffs as well. I mean, that was a big deal. Coach McCarty had talked about getting a pick against Indiana Wesleyan and when that was close. Now, obviously, Northwestern ran away later on, but it was close at one point. Parker Fryer has had a great year too. So yeah, that's a good point, Vince. I'll take that. Cory, who might you mention? One or two players there?
I swear, when Coach McCarty runs out of Friars, I don't know if he's going to know what to do with himself. Now, I will say, National Player of the Year for the regular season, I get no vote in that. Offensive and defensive MVPs for the national championship game, you got to be in the room where it happens. But I have voted for that.
Are you going to be in the room where it happens?
I am absolutely going to be in the room where it happens. That's so fantastic. I've gotten to vote. This will be my fourth chance at voting for the offensive and defensive MVPs for the national championship games.
That's great.
We'll see who we get. Regular season, you've got to go with Dolanchek. I mean, he was first in efficiency in the NAIA. He is third in total yards behind Joaquin Collazo and Johnny Sullivan. Almost 70% completion percentage. 11.1 yards per attempt. Gentlemen, that is absurd. That is like Bugs Bunny kind of numbers there. Leads in touchdown passes with 37. Only had 4 picks against those 37 touchdowns. He threw 9 touchdowns for every pick he threw. I'll take those odds.
Joey, I think I've arrived because I gave my prediction before Cory and we agree on something.
Right now, if Gramstad had played the entire year, I think you would have a hard time arguing against Gramstad. Generally, what I've noticed is that the National Player of the Year is generally whoever makes it to the playoffs. But I don't think that Gramstad's going to get it. No, he can't get it because Dolanchek was the Player of the Year from the GPAC, and so Gramstad's actually not eligible. So it's weird how the NAI does it. But if Gramstad had played a full year, I can't see how he wouldn't have beaten out Dolanchek. So we'll have to see next year what we get out of that. But I definitely think that we'll see Joe Dolanchek and one of my favorite people to see on the stream, the man lovingly known as Papa Dolanchek in Durham.
That is cool. I'm glad you're getting to go to Durham again, make it to the on site to the national championship again. John will be with you, right?
Actually, it's going to be my buddy Tyler's going along with me. He lived in Durham for a little bit. John with that newborn, his wife.
That's true. John has the whole family thing going on. Well, trust me, if anybody understands that with 5 kids, I promise I do understand how that rolls. I think. Well, first off, let me just lead with Hendon Hooker should have been a finalist for the Heisman. I just want to throw that out there as a Vols fan for 4 decades. Really disappointed about that. And the reason I think about that is because Dolanchek, the numbers he put up, 318 plus yards per game passing, 37 touchdowns passing, the season that he did, and he did that in 9 games. You know, he didn't get his last game either, like Hendon Hooker didn't get his last name. I think I'd forgotten that you had to be a conference player of the year because, and at that point, if that's the case, I think Dolanchek's numbers are still good enough to get that honor for the year. And he's already been an NAI player of the year 1 time. He's repeating his GPAC player of the year. So why not there? With numbers like what Gramstad's put up, and think about this, guys, 896 yards rushing, 22 rushing touchdowns. Now, the 896 yards rushing, that's good enough for number 20 in the country in the NAI. He's the only quarterback there. Now, number 21's a quarterback too, Tamilty from St. Francis, who also had a fantastic ground game and passing game. But only one of the top 20 that's a quarterback doing those numbers, nearly 1,000 yards, passing yards of 2264. So he has more than 3,100 yards total offense. But and Vince, you mentioned it. You talk about balance. Here's balance: 22 passing touchdowns, 22 rushing touchdowns. It does not get any more balance than that. Plus, those are fantastic numbers. So if I had to say it, I think that's that. Well, I would push that direction. I would also give you one other name that probably no one would think about. Maybe Vince, because Vince can pull names out. So But I would say this. I think you have to at least give credit to Nathan Hamilton, the kicker for Grandview.
Mm-hmm.
He was 4th in the NAIA in scoring, had 16 field goals behind only Chance Gagnon, by the way, who will be in the national championship game. He had 20 for Kaiser. But Hamilton had 16, had, 62 point afters. So he had 110 points scoring. And how big were 2 of his field goals? The one over Benedictine early on in the year. It keeps that undefeated record undefeated for a long, long time. And then the field goal that was the winner for Grandview. Oh, I just blanked.
Against Carroll?
Was it Carroll? I think it was. Yeah. It was 17-14, and it wound up being Hamilton's field goal. Sorry, I blanked just for a second on that. But yeah, Hamilton had a fantastic year. So if you were going to give it to a kicker,
if you were, I mean, you can't argue the points scored, but kickers don't get their jerseys dirty. So that's a tough argument for a player.
Hey, now look, Concordia's starting punter is also a starting linebacker. So I'll beg to differ there.
Well, yeah, and then their backup punter is 5th in the country in receiving yards. I mean, Cole Moose, who is we could go on for him for a while. Anyway, no, Vince, you're right. You're not going to get someone who doesn't get his jersey dirty, but I just thought he warranted mention. So all right. It comes down to this, guys. It's going to be Kaiser and Northwestern in the championship game. I think it should be a fun game to watch. I think it's going to be good. Obviously, Cory's going to be on site for that one. I'll watch it from afar, but that is this Saturday, by the way, December 17th. What do you think? What about the matchup and what stands out to you? Cory, you're going to be there. Tell us what you think about this matchup.
So it's going to be cold. And maybe not cold in an Orange City, Iowa kind of cold, because that's different kind of cold altogether. But we're talking about a high noon kick, and the high on Saturday is going to be high 40s. So for them Florida boys from West Palm, it's going to be a little chilly.
It'll still be warmer than last week. Des Moines was frigid last week.
That's a point, but still. We'll have to see, make sure that ground game gets going. The short answer on what's going to determine a winner. If Kaiser scores first, they are going to just sit there and eat clock. They've played rushing quarterbacks before. They kept the one from Southeastern in check. They know how to deal with it. They know how to prep for that kind of a dual threat nature. Maybe not at that same level, but they know the concept of dealing with dual threat, and they've done it, and they've been successful at it. Kaiser scores first. I think you're looking at a Kaiser victory. I don't think Kaiser scores first. I think that Northwestern defense, which is rated number 4 in the nation by Bill Connolly of ESPN's SP Plus rankings for NAIA, behind only Marion, Georgetown, and Indiana Wesleyan for reference. I think Northwestern's defense is just right now on a completely different level. And maybe GPAC offenses from top to bottom aren't on the same level as Sun Conference offenses top to bottom, and maybe then Florida boys are a little bit different on defense. I know that's true. Having seen them play some of and seeing the Kaiser defense defend, I just think Northwestern's got it going on. They're gonna get revenge for what they think was an opportunity denied 2 years ago when you had Koima hurt for that national championship game and Lindsay just absolutely run away with it. I think you're going to see Northwestern take it.
Vince, I think it's funny how Cory talks about them Florida boys like he's not one of them. He just keeps saying them Florida boys.
West Palm is a different state than Tallahassee, let me tell you.
That is true. That is true. Vince, what do you see in this? What stands out to you about this matchup?
Once again, and I had mentioned it earlier, I really think when you have two high-scoring offenses that are clashing, I don't think that offense is going to carry the day. I think that with Northwestern's defense and Northwestern and Iowa school coming out and playing in a balmy 40-degree weather, Kaiser will struggle there. I think that that the cold may have an effect on them, even if it's not that cold. It's still colder than Florida. So I really believe that it's going to be a low scoring game. And I think ultimately it'll be the Northwestern defense that'll prove the difference in this game.
You talk about that, and it's funny too. Arizona Christian, when they went to Morningside this year and knowing it was going to be cold, in Morningside, they actually put out a call on social media requesting, hey, listen, if you wanted to donate to the fund, because we don't have any cold weather gear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
we need to stock up a little bit on our supplies here as we make the trip up there to Sioux City. Guys, I would agree with you too. And Coach Sosa, as I was visiting with him, he said something that, of course, obviously these coaches know it better than any of us do, but it was something that I was thinking, so I felt justified in my thought process there. A line of scrimmage is really going to be big in this one. And if Kaiser has they've got good pressure on the line, but they have some pressure that comes in from the linebacker and defensive back core, and they've got folks coming in. Northwestern, it just seems to be top to bottom. The defense is solid. And after giving up 30 points in that first game, as you mentioned, Vince, then since that time, I mean, really, this is a defense that's just not giving up much at all. The 27 points, that was just kind of an aberration right there in the middle of the playoffs. That 27 points to Marion.
That was all the fourth quarter.
It was all in the fourth quarter.
The game
so you really
over.
don't talk about that much at all. And I think Northwestern's defense really has stepped up so much and it's found its momentum, and it's just found itself as the season's gone on. Vince, you talked about Parker Fryer, and I think there are so many other names, but his was the one that stood out to me the most. And he has had a fantastic year, and I think it's going to be something to lead the charge. I don't know, Cory, that if Northwestern holds this to single digits, I really would be surprised. I just think Kaiser's ground game is strong. I think their push on the line is going to be strong. And I would be genuinely surprised if Kaiser didn't put 14 to 17 points on the board anyway. That would even be in a loss. I think Northwestern's going to get theirs, though. I just think that with Gramstad, with what McQuillan does, and you talk about Mosier and Story on offense and what the line has done for them too. I would, right off the bat, I would say Northwestern. I would agree with both of you all. I would say Northwestern, but I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a runaway. And I just, as good as Northwestern's been on defense, I would be surprised if you don't see 14 or 17 points there. So that's my take. If I were to pick one of them, I would pick Northwestern right now. But it has been so much fun to watch all of these guys. So let me ask you really quickly then, as we wrap up our time and pretty much a lot of our NAI football talk. Not that we can't talk about other sports. I think, Cory, you're locked into football. I don't know. Are you contractually obligated to John that you can't talk about basketball or something else in the spring?
Well, here's the thing. Once we in football season, I get 1 month. And then it's flag football season.
All right. Well, we'll have you on to talk about flag football then. Cory, tell us about NAIFBall really quickly and how they find you.
Oh, man. Everywhere you want to be, we are there at NAIAFBall. We are the world's largest, of course, it's NAI football. So that's saying something. Independent NAI football outlet. Come find us on YouTube. We've passed the 1,000 subscriber marker. Woohoo! On our way to 4,000 watch hours. That'll be fun. But we will be live on location Saturday in Durham. So we will be posting video. And you never know. A couple years ago, the stream went out on ESPN. We were there with the rescue stream. You never know what can happen.
Now, can they watch that on Twitter too? Can they follow you on Twitter and get some posts along the way? Are you going to be there live on Twitter too?
Yes, we will be uploading videos and stuff on Twitter. Anything that you see on a scoring play, we'll try to get in the right end zone to be there. But we will be posting.
That's easier said than done.
It really is easier said than done. I've done it. I did it last year, and you just hope there's not a really long interception return for a touchdown. Otherwise.
Just keep filming. So
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
that's the key. I've had a few of those that picked off or scoop and score from 90 some odd yards. You just keep filming.
And
So,
and
just
if
go
they're
from
coming
there.
right at you with the pass, you just back up.
That's right. Makes for a good shot, fun shot to watch.
Oh,
Vince,
it does.
Varsity Sports Show, and that's not the only thing you do. You have a lot going on out there, but where do they find you?
Well, they find us at Varsity, wrong way, at Varsity Show on Twitter. I'm humbled by the fact that you guys are the preeminent experts, both of you, Midwest Sportsnet and NAIAFBALL in your respective parts of the country and in covering NAIA sports. I mean, that's where I get all of my NAIA stuff. I try to sound like an expert at it, but you guys are my go-to. And I definitely, I mean, we do what we do. We obviously cover a lot of things, high school, college, junior college in Arizona and beyond. But I get all my news from you guys, and I'm still looking forward to the day that we can get some type of a get together, maybe whether it's at the AFCA, national convention, or something where we can get together somewhere in the middle of the country where the weather's nice, though. That's the only requirement that I have.
You know what? Vince, I'm all for that. I'm still pitching Dallas for that one.
Dallas
because
sounds like
the weather's nice in Dallas. It really is. And that might be a good place for it. But Vince, and you say that though, and I won't speak for Cory, but I'll let him say that. But I'm humbled and I'm thankful. I appreciate what you have to say about it. And it's been a lot of fun, a lot of hard work. You hit that 1,000 sub mark. You're already at 2,000. You're rolling and stuff. Cory and I are just now at the 1,000, and we're continuing to grow. So we're following in your footsteps. By the way, if you enjoy Arizona sports, especially out in the Phoenix area, you ought to watch Varsity Sports Show's channel because they do a quality production. And it's fun to watch. I have now. Sometimes I have to stay up a little later in this time zone to watch it live, but I have watched some of your shows out there too, and they're really good.
Appreciate
so
you guys.
That is fantastic.
A lot of good stuff to come, and looking forward to continuing to feature a lot of great things, but also, of course, watch what you guys do. So, Cory, just be safe out there and keep reporting regularly. I'm looking forward to seeing this weekend's game.
Now, we're going to be following along, Cory, so have fun. Safe trip to Durham, North Carolina. Noon Eastern time is the kick. It's 11 o'clock Central for folks that are watching that might be cheering for Northwestern. It's an 11 o'clock kick there. That got moved up, just in case you didn't know this. And, Cory, I know you know this, but folks maybe watching didn't know this already because of a lighting situation there. So want to make sure that the lights were all done properly. They wanted to get early enough in the day so that it wouldn't be an issue for lighting. So if it does go into, multiple overtimes, Cory, then it's taken care of lighting wise, but safe
I'll
trip.
just be an icicle.
It'll be fun. There have been those games. Guys, it's been a lot of fun talking football with you this year. The open invitation to both of you is there because after this, well, actually later on this week, I've got some basketball stuff coming up already here on Midwest Sportsnet. Get to talk Missouri Southern, more Division II. Now, I think I'm getting more into the Division II stuff, Vince, but I still doing my NAI along the way. We'll get Missouri Southern's women's basketball coach a little bit later this week. And I think we may get some more volleyball too. We've had some good volleyball conversation, but we're transitioning now to basketball here on the channel. And we will have a lot of that here, NAI and Division II, right here on Midwest Sportsnet. So please like the videos, share the videos, subscribe to the channel. For Cory and for Vince, I'm Joey. Thanks for watching. God bless you all. And I'm looking forward to a great, great national championship game. Have a good night.